All right, hello viewers, and thank you so much once again. This is the Big Talk. Today we are sitting down with one of senior opposition figures, Honorable Daniel Molokele, to reflect on the response that Advocate Nelson Chamisa gave to Wopo Chingono. You know, after quite some time, Wopo were making all those allegations against the president, that he was running a one-part band, that he was running the show to himself. So we have got Honorable Molokele today to just reflect on this incident and the exchange that we witnessed recently. What is your quick reflection?
I think it's really unfortunate that it has come out in the public domain the way it has come out, because it really discourages people. Because if you look at the role that Wopo has played in the fight for democracy in this country in the last few years, coupled with that for our president, these are people who have inspired us. I remember writing a very powerful article, Hope Springs Eternally, after Wopo was denied bail a few years ago, and where I was emphasizing that he represents the hope against the frustrations that we have with the ruling party. So a lot has changed since that time when I was arrested and detained. So if I had my way, this conversation should have happened one-on-one, frank talk. But it is what it is, it has happened, and we need to move away from it. We've got key takeaways. One of the things I have learned in my 7 to 8 years as a parliamentarian is that if you give time to talk, you lose momentum. If you give time to act, you gain momentum. So you will see that even in Hwange, where I'm from, in the last few years, I've shifted a lot from WhatsApp. And my impact has become more and more because I engage the communities direct. The constituency is 30,000 voters, and people on WhatsApp are less than 200. So engaging the constituents directly makes you move forward. And those who talk a lot, who criticize you, once they see you on the ground, they stop. No one takes them seriously.
Yeah, two issues. If you were in Advocate Chamisa's shoes, what were you going to do?
If it was me, I would go offline. Every time I went for campaign elections in 2018 and 2023, I went offline for a year from WhatsApp and Twitter and Facebook. But I went on the ground. So he should focus on engaging the people of Zimbabwe. We saw him recently in the UK. That brings hope to the people. So he should do that. The people of Hwange will be happy to welcome him. He's very popular there. So those who criticize him, most of them are not on the ground. They don't have any influence on the ground. So they have more power on social media. But when you go to Hwange, no one even knows they exist.
But the allegations that were being made by Wopo, I think they were so serious that a person of Advocate Chamisa really, it warranted the response from him. Because you see, it spanned at least for 2+ years, Wopo making all those statements. You were running a one-man, your party was a one-man band, it had no structures, you were just a dictator of some sort, all such things. I think, don't you think they warranted a response
there
given
is
his,
an audience
his
that,
personality?
there is an audience that Advocate Chamisa is responding to. That is the one that is on social media. So that audience is very vocal and outspoken. But when it comes to elections, it has no value. Like in my constituency, the average voter does not go on Twitter. The few voters in Hwange are on Twitter. So Twitter does not influence the elections in Hwange. So he had to respond to that audience. But if you go to Hwange in my constituency, the average person listens to Chamisa more than any other person who is on Twitter. So he has got moral authority and political influence on the voters in Hwange than any other person on Twitter right now.
But what is your say in terms of the allegations that Wopo made?
So let me start by saying that the way the CCC was formed had a context. I was in the 9th Parliament, and I can tell you for free that when the by-elections were called in 2022, Senator Monzora was very clear that if anyone uses the name MDC, they are in trouble, after the recalls had been done in 2020. So the MDC shift from the MDC warranted that to create a new political vehicle for the by-elections, especially knowing that there were recalled candidates who needed to return to Parliament. So the CCC was not formed the same way MDC was formed, where there was time and process. No, it was a reaction. And one of the reactions was that let's learn from the lessons of the MDC. how the system had used leaders, like the Office of the Secretary General, or it was alleged. So that's how strategic ambiguity came, to say that let's not put our top leaders on the firing line. But the way CCC operated, it operated mostly through what we call the CNA, the Citizen National Assembly. And I was a member of the CNA because I was the chairperson of what we call the cluster. So CCC had clusters across the country. So I chaired the Hwange cluster, which was further divided at a constituency level. We had Hwange East, Hwange West, Hwange Central, and we had regular meetings and we organized activities. And even for the election campaigns for 2023, we used the cluster leaders to coordinate the campaign. So it's not true that CCC had no structures. It had structures, and I was one of the structure leaders. I attended CNA meetings. They are on public record. Every time a CNA meeting was being held, everyone could see. We had bureaus, social welfare bureau, we had organizing bureau, we had communications bureau, and so on. And the leaders were in the public domain, were like the spokespersons, the organizers, and so on. But the rest of us were not in the public domain as part of the reaction to the previous attack for Cape 2. So using hindsight, someone then has selective application of memory. Because it was a situational response.
But what about the apex? You were talking about the structures, the cluster leaders, and so on. I appreciate that. What about the apex?
So I remember at the start, our leader refusing to be called president. I remember clearly. I was even in a meeting where he refused to be called president. But because we are creatures of habit, over time they started to call him what? President. But there was no structure like in the MDC where you know that this is the president, vice president, secretary general. At any stage there was no such, because it was part of that strategy to protect the top leadership. So we operated in public at the CNA level. The Citizen National Assembly, that's the one that used to make decisions on behalf of the party.
So at what point did because I think generally people, you were familiarized with the Secretary General post, the Vice President, the President, the Women Affairs Chairperson, so on. At what point did those normative structure names fail in terms of the CC structure itself? Because we now had the bureaus, social bureaus.
From the start, we never used the same structure names that we had at MDC or MDC Alliance. We started to use bureaus and so on. But the difference is that these leaders were not elected. We didn't have a Congress. We didn't elect anyone to be a secretary of this bureau or whatever. These were more of appointments, and our leader would consult among other leaders and come up with names. But this was not meant for the public domain, because it was more of like a crisis kind of leadership.
Okay.
So it wasn't like everyone wants to pretend that everything was fair, but the idea was that we needed to react to the situation. There were by-elections like in a month or two. That's how the CCC was formed.
But post-by-elections?
Yeah, so then after that we started to focus on the 2023 elections. So everything moved fast. So the idea was that after 2023 we'll go now to the process of creating a national process of creating leadership that are elected. But that process never happened because it was over. Yes, after the elections. That process never happened because it was overtaken by the Cape 3 process through Sengezo Chaba.
So the structures that you had were on interim basis?
It was a transitional structure and a reactional structure.
And one of the key questions is, did you have a constitution?
Yes, definitely. So I personally can say that there was no public consultation to say let's have a constitution or what, because it was in a crisis management. But the document was within the consultation level of the top leaders, and it wasn't supposed to be leaked to the public domain, because that was what strategic ambiguity was about. And at that level, we would have assumed that it's a crisis management situation. If there's an interim constitution, it's fine. But when we meet now for the national process where we engage leadership, we will adopt a constitution. Because people were talking about what we call the People's Convention. I remember clearly at that time that we said we'll hold the People's Convention to officially form and launch the CCC. So that is the problem. It never happened because it was overtaken by events. If it had happened after elections, we wouldn't be talking about what we're talking about.
So someone was saying on social media the constitution was made by Advocate Chamisa alone himself.
So that person, if you are a very honest person, that person, where did they get that information? How do they verify it? Because the strategic ambiguity was not about having public meetings. It was about having private meetings. So the top leadership were consulted, and the individuals were consulted in the top leadership, and that document was not meant for the public. It's as simple as that. That's the strategy of strategic ambiguity, because it was a crisis situation. So it was never a constitution that was a people's constitution. The People's Convention was going to come up with that kind of constitution.
You have addressed the structures issues, you have addressed the constitution issues. These were the two key issues that were alluded to have affected the hijacking of your party, as Advocate Jamisa said, by President Mnangagwa and ZANU-PF.
So this is another problem we have with selective memory. We all know that for CAP 2 and the previous situations of splits in the MDC, the office of the Secretary General was at the center stage. So for the CCC, we avoided that direction, where the regime would use some of the top leaders to split the party or the movement. So to hijack the party. So the idea was that they wouldn't have someone to hijack, but we all underestimated the regime's resolve for CAP 3. So they didn't get the 2/3 majority, so they needed a vehicle. So they created a fake Secretary General. There is not even one single person in ZANU-PF and anywhere else in Zimbabwe who can say they knew about Sengezo Chabang. So everyone, including myself, on the day of nomination in Lupane, I was with Sengezo Chabang, and I fought with him. He tried to be a candidate using fake papers for Lupane East. We had our own candidate, the late Moyo. And we fought before the nomination officer and showed him our own papers. And on the day I was nominated as a candidate for CCC, Sengezo was not a leader in any capacity, was not even a member in any capacity. I actually fought him against being a fake double candidate. So the last thing I expected 2 months later is for Sengezo to be called the Secretary General. So let me just put it on record. People of Zimbabwe, Sengezo Chabang is not a Secretary General created by the opposition movement. He's a Secretary General created by the regime.
How did he come into the picture from your knowledge?
He was created, I don't know how he was created, but on the day I was nominated as MP, he was not the Secretary General. He didn't exist as a Secretary General. He was a fake candidate for Lupane East. That's how I know it. So the time he was announced, I saw it on social media. So up to today, and I want to place it on record for the sake of my children and posterity, I do not recognize Sengezo Chabang as the Secretary General. Whatever happened or whoever made him Secretary General, I have no idea who it is. So whatever happened with this process, I cannot testify on it. I have no idea.
Can you answer this? Can a party from, you're a lawyer as well, isn't it? Can a party in Zimbabwe contest, under the current legal regime, can it contest elections without known structures, without the constitution? Can it contest an election in this country?
I think it's a 50-50 situation, because from my experience from the University of Zimbabwe up to now, our government does not follow the rule of law. It follows political convenience. So at any time, anything goes. So I would be honest with you and say we have had briefcase political parties for many elections in this country. You come to an election, you find there are 54 political parties. So they're briefcase parties. But because people are not focusing on them, they are there on the ballot. But an average voter will be like saying, this political party, I've never heard of it. It's not even campaigning, but it's there on the ballot. So it's possible in this country. I, as a voter, I've also seen political parties, or even as a candidate in Wangé, I saw political parties that I was like, there is not even one day in Wangé anyone associated with this party campaigning. Even on election day, we'll still not be knowing. But it's on the ballot paper, the candidate is there. So we don't even know whether they have structures or a constitution. So I'm saying in Zimbabwe, anything is possible, because here, there is more of political convenience than the rule of law in this country.
Yeah, let's just look at the law. What does the law say in terms of when a party, a group that calls itself a party, wants to contest an election? Does ZEC require a constitution? Does it require your structures, knowing who is who within the party?
From where I know, because ZEC has got its own database. So parties that want to contest, or candidates, independent candidates, they have to submit information to ZEC. For example, what is your contact address, contact information? If you've got a leadership structure, if you've got a constitution, you submit. But from where I stand, I don't think it comes as a condition to say that you do not have a leadership structure. There is a political party, I won't mention it by name, that everyone knew, and the person passed away. Today, if you ask me, who is the vice president, who has succeeded the president, who is the secretary general, who is the what, even at national level, without even going to the provincial. In Wange, has there ever been a member of that party? No one.
Yeah, you said it was your strategic ambiguity strategy of not abiding by the normative name, secretary general, vice president. But I remember that Advocate Chamisa was referred to as a champion-in-chief.
Thank you.
So after champion-in-chief, who followed?
Thank you. So that was the idea. There was no structure, as I have explained. And I explained it earlier on in the interview that when we started the CCC, he was not called a president. And I also attended a meeting.
Champion.
I attended a meeting where he actually was emphasizing that there is no one. And I'm not supposed to what? But people, because they are creatures of what? Habit. And the journalists are creatures of habit. So this title called president, it came more from the public domain. Because everyone was called a change champion. And our leader was called change champion-in-chief at the start. Then as time went on, people started to call him president. But it was more of creatures of habit. There is no day when a meeting was held to call him president. So people call him president. Even me today, I call him president. Because there is no other title that I have that I can use that makes me affirm his leadership. So he's president. Right now, I remember another journalist asking me, I see you are calling Chamisa president, but who is the vice president? Who is the secretary general? I said, there is no such a person. And what is your position? I said, I don't have a position. So why are you calling Chamisa president? I said, that is the identity that I give to him, with or without a political party or movement. So I'm a creature of habit. I should have called him champion-in-chief like everyone else, but as time went on, everyone started to call him president. So this is like a political process more than a legal process. And we have to be very clear that the fact that people call him president today, it doesn't mean there is a meeting or a congress that was held where he was made president. That is the identity that they identify with him, with or without a political party.
The critics of your party and your leadership say that it is that ambiguity that then made you vulnerable to hijacking.
That's a lie.
Because there was no recognized.
That's a lie. The previous times, even for Cape 2, were hijacked with the structures. With the party split so many times with structures. So that is a political lie. And people are forgetting that at that time, when it was implemented, it was reacting to the previous time when we had constitutions and structures. And the party was hijacked. So the structures could have been hijacked even if they were there. I can say with confidence that the regime would have identified a top leader to lead that process of Cape 3.
Constitutional Amendment Act now is now law. What is the future of the opposition?
I think for me, the truth is that the class of 99 has reached its political saturation point. The average member of class of 99 is tired, is exhausted. Some have given up that there will ever be change in this country, and it's natural after 30 years of struggle. Some have said, if you can't beat them, join them. So we are going to see a regeneration of the critical mass in terms of the opposition movement, just like we did in 1999. The new movement that was formed, it was divorced from ZAP and ZANU. So we'll see that happening now. We will see a new opposition coming out from this next generation, mostly people who were born in the 90s and the Y2K people. And we will see a new opposition movement outside that class of 99, and they will take the struggle forward. And there's another point that Zimbabweans need to understand, and most of them are not students of political history. Just across the Zambezi River here, if you look at the UPND, that is the ruling party. When they first contested in the elections under the late Mazoka, and then after that under HH, do you know how many elections they contested before they became the ruling party? 5.
They won the 6th.
5. So Zimbabweans need to understand that it can be a what? A process. Because as time went on, HH was gaining credibility. Right now, there is not even one politician in Zimbabwe who is more popular than Advocate Chamisa.
Where do you see yourself personally in that new possible political formation?
So I am very clear. When I wanted to leave Parliament in 2024, I was very clear that I feel I have nothing more to offer, and I wanted to leave Zimbabwe. As you know, that my family does not live in Zimbabwe. So I was then asked by my leader to say, what is more important to you? When you left South Africa, did you leave South Africa to become a parliamentarian?
When you say your leader, you mean Advocate Chamisa?
Yes.
Okay.
When you, because the process happened in the end of January and I was in Wange. And then Parliament opened in mid-February. So that 2 weeks period, I assumed that when Parliament opens, I will go to Harare and submit my resignation letter. So before I went to Parliament, I had a meeting that I shared with the public on that Tuesday. And I told the president that I'm not going to resign from Parliament only, but I'm going to leave the country. Everyone knows that most of my adult life I have not lived in Zimbabwe. So the president said, when you left South Africa, did you come to Zimbabwe to become a parliamentarian, or you came to fight for democratic change? So Parliament is not the only avenue that you can use to contribute to your future. So that's the only reason. So because I needed to be in Zimbabwe, I had to stay on in Parliament. But my main purpose of remaining in Zimbabwe was to be part of this regenerated struggle. So as far as I'm concerned, I'm available to serve the people of Zimbabwe as we rebuild the political movement, to continue the struggle. I will play my part until God allows me to stop. But for now, I see myself as part of the future.
And with K3, are you going to remain in Parliament post 2028?
I've gone in the public, I've done video interviews, I've shared in WhatsApp groups in Wange, I've done Twitter pages. My term of office expires in 2028. And my personal view and my principled position is that I have no authority politically to go beyond 2028. And I say to the people of Zimbabwe, I will not personally commit myself to be a parliamentarian before 2028. There have been concerns about my statements in Wange. I've had meetings with some of the leaders, and they've said, yes, we agree that you have got personal values and principles, but remember that you are part of a broader movement. So we will consider your view first, but then in the context of the democratic movement at that time, your leadership is more important than your personal choices. Just like you are in Zimbabwe right now at the expense of your family, at the expense of yourself. So you are here because you are putting Zimbabwe first. So even in 2028, at that particular time, I would want the democratic collective to sit down and say, what is the strategic advantage of people like me stepping down and triggering a by-election? And if they trigger a by-election, are they going to contest? Also, the Electoral Act might be amended in the next few years, so we will have to react to that. But my personal position is very clear, and I want the people of Zimbabwe to know that I do not have the authority to go beyond 2028. I prefer that the people of Wange be consulted. Even if I were to continue, I will need a renewal of mandate, because I cannot extend my term of office. I was elected. So the only way I can go beyond 2028 is through an election process.
The people of Wange can say in their overwhelming numbers, we want you to continue beyond 2028.
So there is no referendum to prove that the people of Wange want me to go beyond. So the by-election is the only option. Only the by-election can renew my mandate. If there is no by-election to extend my stay in Parliament, then I am an illegitimate representative of the people of Wange.
But what is your response to people who are actually even saying you remaining in Parliament there is just futile, it's just nothing, you are just there for trinkets, you are not going to...
It's because they don't research about the life that I lived in South Africa and the life that my family lived in South Africa.
No, but
because if they look...
They specifically say some members of the opposition, including you,
yes,
remaining in Parliament is just futile, you're just there.
So I'm trying to explain, Costa, that if you are not lazy and you go and research the life I lived in South Africa, then you will realize that I left a life of privilege. And the life that I'm living here is a life of what? Sacrifice. In my last job in South Africa, how much did I earn per month? The money that I used to earn in South Africa per month is equivalent to the money I get per year in Zimbabwe. If you want to understand, that is 8 years ago. So I am a very qualified and skilled person. I can get a job. But the reason I left South Africa was because I wanted to serve my country. The reason I'm in Zimbabwe today, I want to serve my country. It also explains why under the 9th Parliament, I returned that 40,000. Because people are forgetting that in December 2022, I got 40,000 loan. And on a point of principle, after consulting with my leader, I reversed that process in March 2023. So I did not receive that 40,000, I returned it. Why did I return it? Because my leader advised me that this money has got other implications in terms of political integrity.
Was it
and
the same advice shared across your colleagues who were in Parliament and outside?
Everyone who follows the process knows that he engaged the parliamentarians and their own views. So as a collective, they kept the money and they had their own views. And the president respected their views, but he did not agree with them. So there's a difference. Because you've accused him of being a one-man band. But that is an example where the parliamentary caucus overruled him. But I was a member of the parliamentary caucus that chose to collect those monies. But at a personal level, I managed to reverse the process, and I kept quiet because I also respected that the decision of the majority is binding on the minority.
Honorable Molokele, thank you so much for finding time to speak to us. You can have your parting shots to our viewers.
I wanted to say something. This is the only country that we have. I have lived most of my adult life in South Africa, but when I came back to Zimbabwe, one of the reasons why I remain in the country when I have the ability to leave the country is because I understand that this country has a lot of potential. Just from mining only, we've got diamonds, platinum, lithium, we've got gold, we've got coal. If we harness that mineral wealth that God has given us, we can be a very developed country. Not only that, talk about agriculture, talk about tourism, the mighty Victoria Falls, the great Zimbabwe, and so on. So the reason why Zimbabwe is poor today is not because we are a poor country. We are a well-resourced and rich country. The reason why Zimbabwe is creating the highest number of refugees in SADC is because of political leadership failure. Our politics are not aligned. As long as we do not have political leadership that is visionary, full of integrity, and serving the people of Zimbabwe, we will continue to produce refugees for South Africa and other countries. So what we need is the people of Zimbabwe to unite and create a movement that is going to replace the current movement that is only serving a few Zimbabweans. The most Zimbabweans are getting poorer by each day. We need a new great Zimbabwe for everyone, not just for a few people. We do not want a citizen to go and see Victor. We want each citizen to have the capacity to go and see Victor on their own without anyone asking them to get a free car. We want a government that enables each citizen to have the capacity to buy their car on their own, to buy their house on their own. That's what we need. That's the new great Zimbabwe we are fighting for. Thank you.